Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. Today was a big win, or seemed to be, for Republicans in the Congress. Democrats caved to their demands. The government is back open. Ed Henry will have details on that in just a minute. Also, there are new text messages tonight from the FBI with stunning revelations about the Hillary Clinton investigation. Even if you think you know a lot about it, stay tuned. Pretty remarkable. But first, for more than a year on this show, we've discussed our country's immigration policies. Pretty much every night, we've asked supporters of open borders, how can you justify this? Do American citizens benefit from these policies or not? We still don't know. Finally, from MSNBC comes an answer. On her weekend show this Saturday, anchor Joy Reid interviewed a genealogist who had done historical research on my family. Apparently, one of my ancestors came to this country in 1860 from Switzerland. I didn't even know that until Reid's show aired because I have zero interest in the subject. That was more than 150 years ago. It is irrelevant to the decisions that I make as a father or a citizen or an employee of Fox News. It tells us precisely nothing about our modern immigration policy. America's economy has changed quite a bit since the Civil War. Yet, according to MSNBC, this fact is a conversation ender. A single 19th century Swiss relative means you are now required to support green cards for everyone who jumps the borders or overstays a visa in 2018. Boom! Case closed! As Reid's guest put it, people in genealogical glass houses shouldn't throw stones, meaning me. Well, as is so often the case, it's hard to know exactly whether this was meant as a legitimate point of debate or whether it was part of an elaborate parody. Monty Python does DACA. But there's absolutely no doubt about the sincerity of what came next. Here's Joy Reid's response. She wasn't joking at all. Watch.
Tucker's been one of the most sort of aggressive at putting forward what a lot of people have seen as a pretty blatantly white nationalist view of what immigration should be like.
So Joy Reid is accusing us of racism. Let's pause for a moment and savor the irony of that. Reid's entire public career has been built on race baiting. Try to watch her show for 20 minutes and see for yourself. This is the woman who urged the Democratic Party to give up on white voters who voted for Obama and then Trump, saying their votes weren't worth fighting for. That was last August. In October, she suggested that White House Chief of Staff John Kelly was somehow a bigot because he grew up around Irish Catholics. After House Majority Whip Steve Scalise was shot and nearly killed by a progressive activist last summer, Reid openly wondered if we should hope for his recovery. Watch.
It's a delicate thing because, obviously everybody is wishing the congressman well and hoping that he recovers. But Steve Scalise has a history that we've all been forced to sort of ignore on race. He did come to leadership after some controversy over attending a white nationalist event, which he says he didn't know what it was. He also co-sponsored a bill to amend the Constitution to define marriages between a man and a woman. Because he is in jeopardy and everyone is pulling for him, are we required in a moral sense to put that aside at the moment?
So when Joy Reid accuses you of harboring racist thoughts, trust me, it's projection. But it's also a political tactic. Reid can't explain why this country so badly needs to import millions of additional poor people. Nobody on the left can explain that because there's no real answer. So they attempt to short-circuit the conversation with slurs. That's a shame. Immigration matters. It determines who lives in this country, who chooses our government, who shapes our future. It's hard to think of a public policy topic more central to everything. We've tried our best to discuss immigration reasonably and with civility. Most of the time we succeed, not all, but we try. We tried to make a rational case for what we think ought to be done. We'd like immigration policies that favor the American middle class over foreign countries, corporate elites, and lobbyists. We think that laws passed by our Congress ought to be respected and enforced, not mocked and ignored by our own leaders. We believe that America is an actual place, not just an abstract idea. It's a distinct country with its own history, language, tradition, values. Change, when it comes, ought to be thoughtful and incremental. We owe that to the people who already live here, people of all colors and backgrounds. We're suspicious of efforts to remake our society wholesale, especially just so a small group of tastemakers can feel virtuous or have cheaper nannies. Any change is hard. Demographic change especially is hard. Let's stop lying about that. It always hurts the weak and economically vulnerable first. Someone ought to be thinking about their interests, too. Those are our views. And they're not extreme, and we know that because we've seen the polling on the subject. A huge number of Americans agree with what we just said. If you don't believe it, look up the views of African-American voters on illegal immigration. They are not with Joy Reid, to put it mildly. They know what the cost has been. Those who disagree with any of this are always welcome here. This is the only show on television that books guests every night who have a different view. We look hard for the smartest and most articulate people we can find. You can listen to both sides on this show, and you can make up your own mind. The organized left hates that. They no longer believe in debate. They believe in power, accumulating it, and most of all, in wielding it. Anyone who gets in their way gets shouted down, in this case, as a racist. That doesn't work anymore. What was once a devastating attack on a person's character is now just background noise. When everything is racist, from ice cream trucks to Dr. Seuss, nothing is. The term has been devalued by reckless overuse. And that's a shame because it still applies. There's still plenty of racism in America, maybe more now possibly than in generations. Americans are attacked openly for their race every day in print, on television, at public gatherings. People are punished for their race in hiring, in college admissions, in government and private contracting. The left supports all of this. It's central to their worldview. It's key to their political strategy, but it's totally wrong, and we plan to keep saying that. We still believe in what used to be the central premise of American liberalism. People ought to be judged on what they do, not on how they look or who their parents were or what their ancestors did. We don't believe in collective punishment or reward. We believe in the individual, and because we do, we think our immigration policy ought to be driven by what each individual can add to America. Nobody has the right to be admitted by lottery, or because they happen to be related to someone who's already here, or because they snuck in and it's too politically difficult to make them leave. That's what we think. Disagree with it? You are always welcome on this show.